On today's show, the Ottawa Senators and Shane Pinto have agreed to terms on a 2-year contract as part of a busy second day of free agency for GM Steve Staios.
And in order to clear the cap space to make that signing, Mathieu Joseph was traded to the St. Louis Blues.
We'll get into all that, what it means on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Tickets for sports, comedy, theater, and more. Terms apply. Go visit them at Game Time, the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. You can follow the show on social media at Sens Central on Twitter and find the show everywhere you get podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube. Today is Tuesday, July 2nd, and Pilsy, just like you called it, a bridge deal. 2 years, $3.75 on an annual average cap hit for Shane Pinto, who will be back in the nation's capital.
Oh my God, it feels so good to say it, Ross. How many episodes did we do with Shane Pinto questions? Time to worry about Shane Pinto. When will Shane Pinto be signed? You were running out of thumbnail pictures to use. We were getting stressed. All that is over. Now we can relax. Shane Pinto, probably, Ross, the second biggest priority on Steve Staios off-season checklist, right? Goaltending, Pinto, coaching, those are the three big ones. All of those taken care of now, and it's a bridge deal, so you know I'm happy. Since day one, I've been trying to build that bridge brick by brick, pod by pod, Ross, and now it's finally complete and ready to be walked on and enjoyed for all Senators fans. Shane Pinto back for 2 more years, and Ross, there's a reason why this is a good bridge deal, because he's got 2 more years of RFA status after this, so I just think this makes so much sense for Shane Pinto, so much sense for the Ottawa Senators, and Sens fans will be happy to see number 57, maybe 57, back with the Ottawa Senators.
I can confirm it will not be number 57, but Shane Pinto has not decided on his number. One source told me that he doesn't want to make the people who have 12 on the back get a third Shane Pinto jersey, the real super fans out there who are following him number to number to number. But I think the double deuces that he wore at North Dakota would just be awesome to see out there. That being said, this is a win-win-win for another reason.
Oh.
Because we don't have to talk about the negotiation all summer long and wonder how much cap space needs to be saved for that before getting pinched by another team. There's no offer sheet. There's none of that. There's
Get out of here.
2-year contract, and I'll throw in another win, make it 5, but this one's for the team again. They now have the next 2 years to figure out what Josh Norris is going to be able to be. Will the shoulder recover, and will he be a 30-plus goal guy again in the league? I don't doubt it, because the skating's elite. He just needs to stay healthy, and I think the skill will take care of the rest.
And Ross, another reason just quickly to hop in while 2 years is nice. Nick Jensen and David Perron's deals will be off the book. So this is what I'm talking about, that flexibility that's going to allow them to go with the ebbs and flows of cap space, player production, injuries, all these kinds of things. This is a slam dunk, I think, for the Ottawa Senators.
It's so nice to see it on Cap Friendly. Soak it in. Not only using Cap Friendly, but seeing Shane Pinto signed. And the salary structure for the Ottawa Senators up front now, it is just so in line, right? You've now saved $300K, and Amadio's name's in there instead of Joseph. I know losing the third sucks. It really does. It felt kind of, like a kick in the teeth. Like Ottawa hasn't really had that many picks, or they've given away so many to do it again. But then I saw a tweet, I think it might have been Sens Buzz, The Ottawa Senators' last NHLer they drafted out of the third round was Zach Smith in 2008. They haven't necessarily had that much success in round 3.
Yeah, we'll break down the Joseph dealing a little later, probably in the next segment, because I want to stick on Shane Pinto here. I mean, he's got to be so excited too for this to be done. Like, we knew he made it very clear he wanted to be in Ottawa. He loves this group of guys. He obviously sees a defined role for him in this team and opportunity. And another nice thing about this deal, Ross, that makes sense for Shane Pinto is the way it's structured. First year, this year, 2.5 million, and the second year, 5 million. That's going to be good for him having a higher floor to start, higher qualifying offer. And I think that's going to be, or I guess the qualifying offer stays the same. That's based off the AAV.
No, it's not. You were right.
Oh, I thought,
no, think about it. Like DeBrincat, it was a $9 million salary. It was a $6.4 million cap hit.
Right. Okay. Well, in Menda's article, it says his qualifying offer on his next deal can be 120% of his AAV of his previous deal, meaning the floor of his next deal will be 4.5. But yeah, I seem to remember that was a case with the Brinkett. So cap friendly, we got to figure that out before they're gone.
And Matthew Tkachuk. I'm going to look that up. We'll get an answer for you.
Yeah. But either way, I think this just sets up nicely for Shane Pinto. This is a solid deal for how much production he's shown so far. You got to remember the shoulder injuries. Unfortunately, the gambling suspension, that certainly plays a part in his leverage, and the Senators had to kind of wield that. So I think they landed in a perfect spot, Ross. My projections for a 2-year bridge deal was 2 years at 3.5. So Pinto gets a little boost to $250K more than I anticipated. So this is great. And like, look at his last season, 41 games, 27 points. If you put that on pace for 82 games, so double 41, math guy, that's a 54-point season pace. Like, that's pretty solid to get a 54-point pace out of a $3.75 million guy. And you hope that he's going to be even better this year. And then Ross, not only the points is what he brings to this team, he's really improved in the face-off dot for the Ottawa Senators. In 41 games last season, in 496 face-offs, he was at a 50.6 winning percentage. So for a young centerman with shoulder issues that hasn't played that much in the NHL, that's pretty impressive. And especially, Ross, when you consider how much time he played on an elevated role as a second-line center going up against pretty stiff competition in opponent's centermen. So Shane Pinto, you got to bet on this player. I know there's a certain camp of Sens fans that felt disappointed by this and kind of said, well, why wouldn't you sign a guy like this long-term, etc.? I don't think the Sens are worried about Shane Pinto. I think this is all about flexibility and trying to get a deal done that would allow them to have some cap space left over so that they can continue to make roster additions here.
Why would I ever doubt Ian Mendez? Of course he's right. Now, I'm using Martin Necas as an example because the contract details aren't in on Cap Friendly yet, so the qualifying offer hasn't been confirmed. By the time you're listening to this, if you want the exact one, it'll show up there. But on Martin Necas's, it's saying that because the base salary of his last contract was over $1 million, it has to be 100% of that. So because Shane Pinto signed that 1-year league minimum contract last year, I think Ian's right that because it's less than $1 million, it's 100. What do you say? 140%? 120% of the previous AAV, which would be a benefit to the Ottawa Senators. But depending on how things work out here, and if Shane Pinto plays the way that you and I think he can, that number's not going to matter. I think he's going to be a $6 million player in his prime. I think he's that talented. Yeah. He's got the right shot, the great shot, too. 20 goals in his only full season in the NHL. And you mentioned it. He's a two-way guy that can do great in the face-off dot and killing penalties. So great to have Shane Pinto signed. Amazing not to have to worry about it next season. And he's got the 2-year term where he still has RFA, but he will be arbitration eligible. And at that time, the center position depth, I think, and whether or not maybe Josh Norris is a winger, but then you're able to pay Shane Pinto like a second line center in a couple of years. It helps the salary structure with the Ottawa Senators and what could be next as GM Steve Staios continues to massage this roster, and it started out so strong. Pillsy, it's been over a week since Linus Ullmark has been traded to the Ottawa Senators. I was talking to a friend, and he's an Oilers fan. He missed the trade completely because it was right when Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final was on. He goes, "You guys got Ullmark? That's huge." So we can't forget about that as we're looking at these other changes and how you're reallocating more money to the crease. I know just $2 million because you kept $1 million from Korpisalo plus the extra $1 million that Ullmark was making. So that the price you had to pay was $300K from Joseph to Amadio and a couple other things that Staios is doing right now. So I don't know. I think the Sens are a better team than they were 2 weeks ago. I'll tell you that much. So Jensen's going to have to be a big part of this, though. He's going to have to get back to form from a couple of years ago.
I think he's going to be a part of this for sure, Ross, but Allmark's just going to mop up so many mistakes. And we talked about it. Jensen's more disciplined two-way style is going to mop up some of the Chychrun mistakes, right? So honestly, I hate to say it, but it's kind of addition by subtraction that the Ottawa Senators are getting ahead here, and getting rid of Korpisalo was huge.
Another thing they did was getting rid of Mathieu Joseph. We'll look back at what Joseph brought in Ottawa, what we think his next step will be in St. Louis, and why do we have to attach a third round pick, sorry, going the other way. That's all next. I was so fired up with the tease, I couldn't even get my numbers right. 1, 2, 3. More Locked On Senators after the break.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Guys, it's summertime, and there's nothing better than summertime ball games, especially you got the roof open at the Jays game. Ross, I love it. I looked at the schedule. I've already circled a couple games I want to go to. I got to get out to another Looney Dog Day. The Looney Dog Days are epic. Everyone's working as a team to drive up that total hot dog number. And there's a Harry Potter theme game night up against the old Oakland Athletics. Lots of fun stuff going on at the ballpark. But
Allmark's going to be there, I bet.
Why? He's a big Harry Potter guy?
Big Harry Potter guy. He named his son Harry.
All right, there we go. Maybe we'll see Linus Ullmark there. But with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Ullmark would be smart to check out Game Time because it takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I love using the Game Time app because the all-in prices, no gimmicks, no thinking you're getting a deal, and it's gone. The panoramic views, you get to see exactly what your seat is going to look like. And maybe you're not a great planner, Ross. Maybe I have those days circled, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make it, or the weather changes and I got afternoon off and it's a bright sunny day and I want to hit the ballpark. No worries. They got killer last-minute deals, so you can go whenever. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Farm to Fork. We love our friends at Farm to Fork, a local company that's servicing Ottawa, Montreal, all of Ontario, and our friends up in Nunavut. Now, what is Farm to Fork? It's a premium meat and seafood company that brings you the ability to not worry about the main, most important part of your meal, the protein. All you need is the freezer space, and you can pull out per day what you would like. That way you can get variety, the spice of life. You know you're getting quality ingredients. Just go look at their average 5-star reviews on Google. They don't miss. And they get you there right on time. They actually send you a notification to your phone to let you know when your delivery is coming by so they can be seamless with the handoff. You can stay in your PJs and wait for your ribeyes to come. That's the dream for me. You can also get sustainable seafood and a whole lot more at Farm to Fork. And because you're a listener of the Locked On Senators podcast, you're entitled to 10% off your first order by using code LOSP10 at checkout. You just got to taste the Farm to Fork difference. These natural, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, all of these amazing ingredients that are hand-carved at the butcher's table and then flash frozen to seal in all the freshness. Go check them out today, farm2forkdelivery.ca. You can get the bundles. You can get all the chicken breasts in the world and get those premium pork ribs to throw on the Barbie. It is a guaranteed crowd pleaser. So check them out, farmtoforkdelivery.ca. Taste the farm to fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. All right, Pillsy. This segment's brought to you by Farm to Fork. And man, I am getting fired up for this upcoming season. It's that quick. Just when I'm out, they pull me right back in. Development camp is ongoing, and we have got a lot of movement with Steve Staios and Michael Landlauer at the helm for their first summer in charge.
And Ross, I want to touch on this quick before we get to the Joseph deal. How exciting is a schedule release? Getting the full year. Immediately I'm scrolling. I'm looking at road trips. I'm looking at homesteads that are going to be awesome. Getting the schedule is so much fun. And this is an interesting year for the Ottawa Senators with the no Europe trip this year. Everybody, the PTSD coming back from Europe, don't worry about that. However, with the World Juniors happening in the nation's capital, that's turned the Ottawa Senators schedule. They have their longest road trip in franchise history, a 9-game road trip. Ross, last season, road trips derailed the Ottawa Senators season. So that's going to be a major point for the Sens' success if they have a bad or good or average road trip.
They also play the Montreal Canadiens on the road for their second game of the season. That'll have a playoff feel to it, right? Second game, you need to get off on the right foot. At least it's going to be that way amongst the fans. And you know Travis Green's team is going to be ready to go after a tough training camp. At least we hope so, because they cannot afford to get out to a slow start once again. Another schedule quirk. How about the Ottawa Senators playing in Tampa 2 games in a row? I don't think I've ever in my life, outside of the COVID season, seen 2 teams play in the same location 2 games in a row.
The double Detroit one is the only one.
Oh, but that was COVID adjacent. Didn't the game get postponed, or was that a weather related?
I think it was a weather related postponement. Yeah, that's another one, Ross, that we circled as going Tampa in February. Sign me up.
Sign me up. Final thoughts on Pinto before we get to Mathieu Joseph. These numbers are absolutely astounding, and they're numbers that we've been keeping for the last years.
Yep.
What's the most impressive one? The fact that when all of Tim Stützle, Shane Pinto, and Josh Norris play, it's only happened 53 times. How sad is that? In 4 years. 4 years, 53 total games. The Senators are 32-18-3.
That's nice, but it's not the best one in my opinion.
The best one, and more impressive from the standpoint of it's the consistency over the course of 55 games. When Shane Pinto records at least 1 point, the Sens are 39-10-6.
Whew.
39-10-6. Bill.
Your Ottawa Senators. Wow.
And then you've got as well when he has at least 2 points.
Yeah, when he has at least 2 points, which has happened 11 times, there's 7-2-2. Like, whew. Pinto is such a big part of this team's success. It's crazy.
Pillsy, I've got a comparison for you. This is unbelievable. To put in perspective, that number, the Senators being 39-10-6 when Shane Pinto has at least a point.
Okay.
The Boston Bruins were 32-12-11 through 55 games this year.
Wow.
Who won the President's Trophy this year? Is it the New York Rangers?
Yep.
I bet you that's a better record than the New York Rangers had through 55 games this season. The number is, drum roll please, in the first 55 games of the 2023-24 season, as I watch the loading wheel, it doesn't matter. It's probably pretty close to it. The fact of the matter is when Shane Pinto gets on the board and when he's in the lineup, the Ottawa Senators win hockey games over a consistent amount of time. So great to have him back. I think a lot of fans would have liked to have seen it be a longer-term deal, but the fact that it doesn't walk him to UFA, the fact that it allows you to figure out with Josh Norris what the best approach is for his next contract, and the flexibility that you added where you're able to have those expiring contracts and the cap go up, should be no problem to give him a $2-3 million bonus if he deserves it.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of things, Mathieu Joseph, a very well-liked teammate, traded to the St. Louis Blues with a third-round pick. Now, he was acquired with a fourth-round pick when the Senators traded Nick Paul to Tampa. What are your thoughts when you saw that come across the wire? And that happened, obviously, first, about 2 hours before the Pinto signing.
So if people aren't aware by now, which it would be surprising what this trade was, Ross mentioned Joseph and a third going from Ottawa to St. Louis. Maybe you're thinking, oh, what's coming back? Good old future considerations. Ross, I'd be lying if I said that didn't shock me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
if I'm a Blues fan, I'm kind of like curious. I think Joseph could do well there. I think that it's going to be a good fresh start for him. I wish he would have been a bit more consistent as a scorer, but as a kind of utility player, I think he did his role more or less as expected. And I just think there's poor allocation elsewhere that forced the Sens' hand to an extent.
I'll add one wrinkle there, though, Ross. I think where this all changed, Mathieu Joseph was signed to that contract when he showed an ability to be able to play up the lineup and play in that top six. That wasn't the case this year. He wasn't able to elevate his game to be able to hold a top six spot when he needed to. And I think that's where Steve Staios and the new regime said, we need some more versatility here. And if he's not able to do that, we need to find other guys that are. Now, Mathieu Joseph was a big part of this team's penalty kill. Only Parker Kelly and Claude Giroux played more minutes as forwards on the penalty kill. And Parker Kelly obviously gone to Colorado. So you're losing two of your top five players in penalty kill minutes. And Mathieu Joseph was a nice penalty killer because he added that speed threat, which really made teams have to play a little tighter with the D-to-D passes or playing the puck along the boards at the blue line. So that's an element that's going to be missed. But I think, Ross, if you put it in the sense that, all right, the Sens had to trade Mathieu Joseph and a third-round pick to have Shane Pinto, and the return being hypothetically Shane Pinto to a 2-year deal at 3.75, I'm making that deal all day. So it's unfortunate that you had to cut Joseph loose and that you had to pay a price to cut him loose for nothing in return. But this is the kind of business you have to do if you're Steve Staios to mold the team the way you feel fit. And now the Ottawa Senators have approximately $3.7 million left in cap space to make some more moves.
I will miss when Joseph decided to go and just dominate the Detroit Red Wings every single time they played. I want to say he's well over a point per game as a member of the Ottawa Senators against Detroit. Obviously, he's been in a couple fights too for different situations, but like he single-handedly elevated his game many times in rivalry games, and I appreciated that about him. The 3-on-5 ability too as a penalty killer will be missed, but look, Ottawa added some speed down the lineup, and I do think that Amadio is a better fit if that's what we're calling the kind of trade-off through free agency for his salary.
And Ross, maybe I'm just off on this, but it seemed like Joseph turned it up against the Tampa Bay Lightning too.
Yeah, of course he did.
Yeah, so happy trails.
Look out twice next year.
Yeah, happy trails to Joseph. And Ross, kind of a fun story. He's going to join his brother in St. Louis. So the two Joseph boys are going to be with the Blues.
Very, very cool. All right. So the Josephs are heading to St. Louis, but that means the Ottawa Senators, even after signing Shane Pinto, have some more money to play with. Where are the biggest needs on their roster? And the Belleville Senators are adding the leading goal scorer from the league last season. And it's a name that you'll recognize, Adam Gaudette. More on that next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day. All right, Pilsy. What a 48-hour span it's been. Really a week and a day. You can go back to Linus Ullmark, the ins and outs of this team. So much turnover, and there could still be more to come because Steve Staios has given himself that flexibility. even though the Joseph trade was done before Shane Pinto's signing today, it didn't need to be. The Senators didn't go over the cap, or wouldn't have, had they just given Shane Pinto 2 years at a 3.75. What do you make of the timing, and do you think something else could be imminent for the Senators to improve somewhere else? And if so, where would you be looking to add?
Ross, you said it didn't need to be. Mathematically, yes, they could have finished it, but I don't think it's any coincidence that hours after they trade Joseph and clear the cap space, they were able to somehow get the Shane Pinto deal done. I think Steve Staios was thinking that unless he was able to move that cap space, he wouldn't be able to fully commit to giving Shane Pinto that any sort of deal, probably, honestly. So I think it's connected here for sure, that getting rid of Joseph allowed Staios to feel he's able to do that. Because, hey, Martian's talking about Chef Stevie Staios. I don't think he's done cooking dinner, or he's done dinner, Ross, but he's got a couple desserts left here. And that cap space allows him to have a little bit more in the tank, because I think this team needs just a little bit more. I think certainly it's better now than it was a couple weeks ago, or in a better position. But I think maybe you're looking at another veteran right-hand shot defenseman, and I'd like another physical fourth line bottom six guy for the NHL. And then in the AHL, I think they could use a veteran right shot guy as well. So there's a couple moves I would look at doing for Staios, but I think we'll get into some more focused targets in tomorrow's episode, Ross. But I think also that Steve Staios is going to wait a little bit and try to cash in on really good, I shouldn't say really good, but good value players that haven't got picked up yet, and signing 1, 2, or maybe even 3 guys for very low deals because they haven't been picked up yet and just want to go somewhere and get something done. So look for those to be completed a little later on. I think as far as kind of big, impactful moves go, Steve Staios is probably going to relax a little here.
And I think it's rightfully so. You need internal growth from the top 6. That's what's going to really make or break the upfront ability for this team. Of course, for success, we're looking more at the goaltending being above league average. Would be a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Now, the Senators do only have 43 contracts out of the 50 slots, so they're able to sign 7 more guys if they'd like. I don't think they get right to it, but I could certainly see a few more coming their way. And I don't believe that's actually counting the RFA still. So we would have to save a couple left, where Igor Sokolov, arbitration eligible. We'll see if they're able to get a minor league move for him. Then you've got Lassie Thompson, who we know has already signed over with Malmo in the SHL. So that slot won't matter this year. And then the 2 goalies, Kevin Mandolese and Mad Sogard, are going to need contracts. So I'm with you. I'll say 3 more moves. And they're going to be, I think, minor deals, maybe one more kind of up the lineup AHLer, because they added one today. My goodness. Adam Gaudette, who played 50 games with the Ottawa Senators back in the it was the year after the COVID season, because, man, there's a couple iconic photos of the Vancouver Legacy game where he scored the shootout winner and was just like, I think he scored in the game too. He was unbelievable that night. So, and then didn't he not play the second half of the game? I think he didn't play in like 25 minutes of game time, and then just went out and scored the shootout winner, and then just looked at the crowd. So obviously he's got a history of big moments. He won the Hobey Baker. Look at the list of Hobey Baker winners. Like, that is a who's who of elite talent at the NHL level. But he just seems like that sometimes. I mean, he's played over 200 games, but last year he played primarily in the AHL, and he won what is called the Willie Marshall Award for the top goal scorer. He had 44 goals last year in the AHL, and the Ottawa Senators are paying him almost $500,000 of AHL salary. What a change that is from the previous regime. Like, not only that, they signed Hayden Hodgson. We talked about that on yesterday's show. Sorry, we're recording at night, so I think I said today. But yesterday, they were able to do that, and that was $375,000. So if you look at it, the Belleville Sens are paying almost 7 or 8 guys over $125,000, which is, I mean, just those 8 players, it's probably what they were paying the whole team a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's a huge improvement, Ross, and I mentioned it. If they're going to have any success, and keeping the community in Belleville engaged. They have to invest in good players, and getting Adam Gaudette is huge. Like, Ross, this guy's an AHL legend. In 148 AHL games, he's got 134 points. Like, he's nearly a point per game guy when he's playing in the minors. So if you have him as your top guy in Belleville, and then maybe he comes up and plays a couple games in the NHL, I think that's perfect. So they nailed it with this signing, and it's great to have some more familiarity. I mean, you look at a Mathieu coming back now.
Not the names,
back.
Not the names that the fans would have guessed, when it was like, oh, Pajot. We had Stefan Nason on a target list.
Yep. Yeah, I did not expect a Gaudette return, I'll tell you that.
But seriously, like, this guy is a difference maker at that level. And you got to think, I mean, this is likely a replacement for Rourke Chartier, if not Garrett. Not Garrett, rather, of course, Pilon re-sign. I'm thinking
PLC.
who am I thinking of? Josh Curry.
Yes.
Josh Curry. Yeah. So those are the two UFAs still for Belleville. And I think that they look a lot better too. So we're starting to see the Stevie Staios stamp on this team. And I like the direction that they're headed. I think the biggest move happened last week, getting Ullmark, and now it's just about filling out the roster. And how nice is it we don't have to have a summer of Shane Pinto discourse? I don't need that in my life. Nobody does.
And Ross, even better than a summer of that, a training camp. Avoiding a training camp of Shane Pinto discourse and that distraction and not having him there. It's done. It's done.
It's huge.
It's so big because this team has to start off right. They never have an opportunity to start a season without distractions and or major injuries. And it looks like they're set up to avoid both of those. And Travis Green's going to work them hard, and they're going to hit the ground running to start this season. So I'm fired up. I know there's some Sens fans that haven't loved the way Steve Staios has operated here. I think it's tough. You got to express patience. He's building a team a certain way. I've had my frustrations, but I keep going back. Ross, let's go back to our off-season checklist. You need a goalie. Not only did they get a goalie, they got a Vezina winning goalie. That's also an amazing person. Like, I think that's huge too. I think Ullmark's going to be a big hit in the dressing room and with fans. You needed to get Shane Pinto done before training camp. They got it done. You needed to get a new head coach and change the coaching culture. They did that as well. And then he's done a lot of other little things on our offseason priority list as well. So maybe it's not the path, and there's some decisions that Sens fans don't like letting Brandy walk, trading Mathieu Joseph with a pick, the Tarasenko deal. Yeah, the Tarasenko deal, underwhelming, letting Parker Kelly go, all these kinds of little things. But I think ultimately this is shaping up to be a team that you can look at as less desperate and more complete with veterans and players that make sense in their roles and have versatility, like the Amadio versatility, the Perron versatility. These are big things. So I like the direction that the Ottawa Senators are going here.
Not a lot of red left on that depth chart. If you're watching on YouTube, just Igor Sokolov, the only forward who remains as a restricted free agent. Now, this is not to say that Rourke Chartier or that Josh Curry won't be back, but this is a pretty full forward group, and it's going to be really interesting to see the race for the fourth line positions, because we saw Zach McEwen, even with 3 years left on his deal, was sent down and played some AHL games. Noah Gregor, I don't think they would be shy on a 1-year league minimum-ish deal that send him down if there's players that are earning opportunity. So I'm going to be really interested in training camp this year. You always are a bit more under a new coach, right, Pilsy? Like, you're always paying a little bit more attention at who he likes, who he's being a little bit harder
Green's
on.
Training camps, Ross, they get a lot of attention.
Yeah, so I'm going to be really, really interested to see that. And then on the back end, as you see, I'm going to keep pulling these up because I think this time of year things change so quickly that it's nice to see. So if you could upgrade, like on Clevin, JBD, Hamonic, and I'm not saying get rid of necessarily any of those three. Obviously, Clevin I see as a future impact player, as a defensive defenseman, physical guy. But if you could get one more, like Nate Schmidt just signed with Florida, that would have been a good one. And we'll get into guys who are available more tomorrow. But this is how you have it shaping up here for the Ottawa Senators as the roster is beginning to take shape. Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show? I think we've gotten through a couple really busy ones now, from the draft to this, and I mean, this is what we live for. This is one of the most exciting weeks of the year, and there's just been so much turnover. We talked yesterday, over $1 billion was handed out across the NHL, and for Steve Staios, it's about putting his own stamp on this roster.
Final thoughts for me is positive. Pillsy's back, Ross. There's been some up and downs. The draft was interesting for me, but I'm starting to see the direction. I'm starting to see the stability, and I think we've gone too high in off seasons before, and we've gone too low even at times. We just got to be chill, look at what's in front of us, and not put expectations too high. Staios has done a good job not doing that. He said the main focus is just consistently winning more games. There's no big goal, kind of bold, must do this expectations for the team. So yeah, like I mentioned, I just want to reiterate, I do think the Senators are on the right path here.
The Ottawa Senators with $3.6 million expected remaining in cap. So make your picks. How are they going to fill out the rest of their roster? Those numbers are with 11 forwards, 6 defensemen, and 2 goalies. It's going to be fascinating to see, and the Atlantic Division is always one of the toughest in the National Hockey League. For more, you can check us out on Twitter at Sens Central. As we mentioned, on Thursday's show, we will look at specific targets coming up for the Sens. We've got a couple big guests coming up in the next few weeks. Once we get through this busy period, we'll be back to interview season as we continue to be calendar respecters and just dive into what's ahead of us. And right now, it's this roster makeover and how the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you for watching, listening, and engaging with the show. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.